Our global economy is losing $8.8 trillion a year in productivity. Why? Disengaged workers. Today, I'm going to give you an update on Gallup's State of the Global Workplace and what it means for you. Helping you win in your work life so that you can win in your personal life. This is going to be a deep dive into where we stand in the workplace. Now, why am I going to give you this deep dive today? Because you spend more time at work than you do anywhere else. Those of you that are working, you're watching this show, listening to this show because of work-related issues. And so this is going to frame some realities that I hope does a couple of things for you today. I want you to walk away from this going, okay, I'm not alone. I'm not alone. This is a very real snapshot as to how the workplace is operating today, what's right and what's wrong, what's missing and what is confused. I'll walk through all of that while giving you some data. But for those of you who are in a management or leadership role, this is really important for you. For those of you that are not in a leadership or management role, this is going to be enlightening and I hope encouraging, in that you can now realize, okay, this is the matrix, if you will, and I've got to decide, do I want to be in that matrix or not? So here we go. Let's get into this. Gallup's research in their 2023 State of the Global Workplace finds that having a job you dislike, that you hate, is worse than being unemployed. Now, we're going to get into the actual percentages of who falls in the hate versus just dealing with it versus I'm thriving. We'll get into that in a moment. But that's pretty stark. As they measure well-being at work, Gallup finds very clearly that having a job you hate is worse than being unemployed. Now, you think about the stress of being unemployed. The emotions, the thoughts that come with that. And that is better than being in a job you hate. This is real when we talk about mental health and we talk about emotional health and physical health. This is important. So scoffing at, well, I just got to go to my job and I just got to make it through the weekend. Let me tell you something. The data shows, the science shows that it's worse for you than being unemployed. So what's the breakdown? As we look at the world's workers, 23% are what we would call engaged. They're thriving at work. 59% are not engaged. This is the new phrase, quiet quitting. It's here to stay. Now even Gallup, the foremost leader in workplace research, calls it quiet quitting. And then 18% are actively disengaged. We're talking about the emotion of hate here. Extreme dislike, if you want to call it that. And now these are called loud quitters. They're just walking around with their butt in the air, as my grandfather used to say, just showing their rump, I got a problem, okay? Now, let's define quiet quitting. Let's walk through the thriving, quiet quitting and loud quitting, okay, very quickly. And again, this is how Gallup defines it. It's important to define it. Okay? The thriving at work, their work is meaningful. And they feel connected to their team and organization. So there's an enjoyment of the work and an enjoyment of the relationships in the workplace. That would be the thriving. That's only 23% of workers. Quiet quitting, these employees are simply filling a seat and watching the clock, putting in the minimum effort required so they don't get fired or demoted. And then, of course, the loud quitters, these employees are taking actions that directly harm the organization, undercut its goals, and oppose its leaders. In other words, these people don't like confrontation, so they're going to pout and hope they get fired. Or they're just so unhealthy and so miserable, watch this, that they just don't even care anymore. Yikes. Now, worker stress is at an all-time high. I'm jumping through pages here, folks. Kenny Boy did his homework today. Stress for the world's employees at an all-time high. Now, Gallup does not ask for specifics as to what's causing the stress. But of course, the work, the amount of work, low engagement, meaning you just don't want to be there. That can cause stress because you don't want to be there, but I got to go there. That can cause a lot of stress. But external factors are an issue. Inflation, family health issues, anything outside of work can also be a source of stress. But this is what's interesting. When employees are engaged at work, they report significantly lower stress in their overall lives. Why? Well, let's just say you're spending 7 to 8 hours a day and you're engaged, you enjoy it, you find it meaningful, and you feel that it is a healthy environment. That's going to reduce so much of your stress. Maybe you're less stressed out by the dog chewing up a pillow when you come home. But let me tell you something. You have a bad day at the office, or a bad week, or a bad month, or a bad year, and you go home and watch the littlest of things trigger you. You know this is true. Now, I want to just say something very quickly, and this may not be popular with some people, but it has to be addressed. It has to be addressed. Some of you are stressed out by situations that you shouldn't be stressed out by. I think there's a lack of grit in our world today, and I'm just going to point this out briefly. How much of the stress that you're dealing with at work is brought on by you, not everybody else? I think that's a really, really helpful question. Now, it's one that's hard to ask, but I'm just going to put that out there. I just wonder how many of us are dealing with some insecurity, some fear, some doubt. Maybe we're dealing with some stuff in our home life and it's affected us. We come into the office and we take something that's happened to us one way when it really was never meant that way. And I'm just saying, I think it's important to examine, if you're dealing with a lot of stress at work, how much of it could be because of you? Are you the common denominator? It's worth asking. Now, we're talking about stress. This is fascinating. Page 8 of the study, for those of you that want to download this is downloadable for just anybody. Engagement, good, proper engagement at work, or negative engagement, has almost 4 times as much influence on employee stress as work location. Here's what they found. The flexibility of remote work allows for greater autonomy and well-being, which today's workers highly prize. This is true. But again, it's not about the remote work, it's about the flexibility. But what people experience in their everyday work, their feelings of involvement or enthusiasm, matters more in reducing stress than where they are sitting. So the argument that remote work is going to have a greater impact on positive mental health is not true according to this study. While flexibility is great and it gives us autonomy and all of us want that, I talk about that all the time, bottom line is how you experience the work and the emotions around the actual work and what the engagement is like matters way more than whether you're in the office at a cube or in an office or at home on your couch. Coming up next, what's the solution to driving better engagement? We'll break it down.
Do you know what you were born to do? In order to get hired at a job you love, you need to get clear on your talent, passion, and mission. That's why our team created the Career Clarity Guide. In just a few minutes, this free tool will walk you through a process to discover what you do best, that's your talent, the work you love to do, that's your passion, and the results that matter to you, your mission. Then you'll feel more confident throughout the job search process. To get started, go to kencoleman.com/clarity.
Helping you win in your work life so you can win in life. This is the Ken Coleman Show. If you're enjoying the show via YouTube, if you're watching a highlight or a full episode, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and share with somebody that you think it'll help. If you're listening via your favorite podcast app, we would love if you would consider giving us a follow and a 5-star review and share as well. All right, so continuing on with our breakdown of the state of the global workplace. And again, the reason we're going over this is you need to understand the matrix in which you are in. And if you want to get yourself out of that matrix, this is important stuff. So before we get into what leaders need to be doing, and some of you need to know this so you can help your leader. If you have a good enough relationship with them, you could give them this feedback. For those of you that are leading, you need to understand, what can I do about all this lack of engagement? A quick review. Okay, if we look at the numbers on engagement, we've got 59% that are quiet quitters. They're just doing the bare minimum, and 18% that are loud quitters. So, folks, we're nearing almost 3/4 of American workers are not in a positive engagement level. And over half of employees express some level of intent to leave their job. 51% of currently employed workers said they're watching for an opportunity seeking, they're watching for a job that they can take. Now, here's why that's important, leaders. 51% of the people in the office have got their eye wandering. That's a problem, but it's also an opportunity. And that's what I want to focus on. It's an opportunity. They didn't say they were leaving for sure. They were saying they're looking. And again, remember this, people leave leaders, not companies. They can say, I left company XYZ, but they always leave the leader because they hold the leader responsible for why they're not happy. I'm just going to tell you, that's fact. So, according to Gallup CEO John Clifton, a friend of mine, there are some key opportunities that they take away from the study that leaders can move on. And the first one is focus on your winnable employees. I love how they said this. What they're talking about are the 50, let me get the numbers back here. Let me keep that close by. The 59% of workers that are disengaged, they are the quiet quitters. These employees could be won. Because with a few changes, you can take them from disengaged to engaged. Remember, they don't hate their job. They're not there to be rebels. They're just simply doing the bare minimum because they don't see an opportunity for growth, or they don't want an opportunity for growth. They don't want to be with you, but it's kind of the misery they know versus the misery they don't know, right? In other words, we'd rather be miserable than uncomfortable. Most people would rather deal with what they know than take on this brand new path, okay? Now, the survey leaders tells us why they would be quiet quitting. What would have to be true? What would have to change to go from I'm disengaged, I'm just doing the bare minimum, to man, I'm engaged, I find this work meaningful, and I care about this organization? Here's a few. So what would you change about your workplace to make it better? This is fascinating stuff. Do you see yourself in these answers? 41% said engagement or culture. And they're talking about, I'd want to see more engagement from everybody in the culture. I want the culture to be more engaging. What do they mean? Here's specific comments from that. Everyone to get recognized for their contributions. It's fascinating to me. These are men and women who are adults, and they're saying, I think everybody should be recognized for their contribution. This is elementary school stuff. No matter how old we get, folks, this answer, this data tells us we are still little boys and little girls who want to be noticed. We want to be seen. We want to be valued. Leaders, this is such a breakthrough for you if you would just get this. Yes, I know you're overworked, leaders. I know you're fried. I know you got a lot on your plate, but you can find time in your day to look at your direct reports and say, hey, Susan, great job on this report. I saw your talent of blank and blank and blank, or whatever. Find a way to recognize people for their unique contribution. Here's another comment. I would like if the managers were more approachable and we could talk openly. Again, leaders, doesn't take a leadership book or an MBA. Talk to people. Open your door. Tell them, hey, you're safe in here. I would want more autonomy in the work. Again, this comes down to trust, leaders. Leaders, train people. Develop them to the point where you trust them. And if you trust them, you'll give them more freedom. That's what they're looking for. They just want to be free. Tell me what I need to do, give me what I need to do it, and turn me loose. It's fascinating. I wish I was respected more. Clearer goals, stronger guidance. People want to coach. That's what I take away from that. Clearer goals, stronger guidance. Lead like a coach. Leaders, again, what's the heart of a coach? Coach wants someone to learn. Coach wants someone to perform at their best, lifting the team. People want some clear goals. This is the scoreboard. This is what we're trying to do to win. This is what a win looks like. And then they want to be coached. Fascinating data on Gen Z, by the way, not related to this Gallup study, but Gen Z, I'm raising 3 Gen Z kids right now. Gen Z wants a mentor relationship in the workplace. Now, it actually comes from a negative reason. I'll just say this quickly, move on. But we parents have coddled our kids to where the kids are so used to us hovering over them when they tie their shoe, when they put their shin guards on, when they drive, that now they crave that older person overlooking them and guiding them. So take advantage of it. What would you change about your workplace to make it better? Pay and benefits. Increase my salary. Only 28% said it was pay and benefits. And then 16% said well-being. So even America's workers, global workers are going, engagement, the culture needs to be better, and they're pointing directly at their leader. Leaders, pay attention. So we know what they want. So you've got to acknowledge that they have some human needs, leaders, that they have some human needs. The 3 human needs that are primary, that must be met in the workplace are very simple. I want to know that I've got a meaningful role, that my work matters to me, and I see it mattering to other people. Number 2, I need to be recognized for my unique contribution. Attaboy, attagirl, you're doing a good job. Hey, listen, I see you. You stepped in the other day, and only you could do that. This is just good old-fashioned a pat on the back. And the 3rd thing they want is a relationship with their leader. They want that coach role. Leaders, you want this too. It's not a separate set of human needs, primary needs that need to be met. You've got them too. Now, this is what drives engagement up. In other words, I want to be here. I like being here. Now, watch what happens. Individual performance goes up. Okay? That leads to overall productivity. Watch, and then profitability. We got leaders scratching their heads, trying to come up with the latest, greatest technique. Go to some leadership conference, listen to a talk, listen to a podcast. Let me just tell you something right now. Leaders, find your way of meeting those 3 human needs. You'll be shocked at what happens. You've got to acknowledge that you've got some responsibility here, that there is a tension that has long existed, and I'm speaking now of the American workforce. I would think it's true of the global workforce, but let's just be honest. If I make a joke right now, it doesn't matter how old you are. If I go, yeah, I'm working for the man, everybody gets that, right? And there's a tension there that, well, my boss, my leader, management, executives, well, they're up here and I'm down here and I'm just doing my best to get along. That's how we come into the workplace, folks. Now, this younger generation, let me tell you something about, we've seen this with millennials. They began this trend where they expected to work at a place about a year and they expected to get promoted or they would move on. It's even faster for Gen Z. Gen Z is thinking entrepreneurial. They're thinking about starting their own thing because they've watched their parents and grandparents gripe about work their whole life. There's a great opportunity right here to begin to attract people by simply saying, I'm going to find something for you to do that you love, and I'm going to love you while you do it.
Are you wondering if you should leave your current job or stay put? You're not alone. That's why we created the Should I Quit My Job quiz. In just 5 minutes or less, this quiz will help you determine if you're at the right company and if you're in the right role. If you need to make a move, you'll even get practical next steps to keep you moving forward. Listen, stuck is a choice, and life is too short not to do what you were created to do. To take the quiz, go to kencoleman.com/quiz.
All right, continuing on here, just wrapping up now on what do we do as leaders, people who have position of influence to help drive engagement. The answer from the Global State of the Workplace report from Gallup is very simple. You've got to be a better manager. You got to give them a better manager. That's the takeaway. The manager is the linchpin of the engagement in the organization. 70% of team engagement is attributable to the manager, according to this report. But most managers are quiet quitting too. And so this starts to go further up the organization. No surprise here. Those managers are waiting for the tools to build great teams. Many times these managers have never been trained. They've never been properly trained to go, here's how you care for people. Because think about it. How do we promote people into management? It's always our high performers. So we got somebody who's never led before, and they keep leading. They keep doing good. And so we go, well, got to promote you, I'm going to promote you into leadership. But we don't do any leadership training. We don't share data like this with them. Can I just tell you that we humans are pretty smart and pretty adaptable. If we just told them, hey, here are 3 things you need to know about being a manager. This is what your team needs. I trust you to figure out how to meet those needs. And just step back. I believe men and women would figure this out. But the problem is our management level, leaders throughout organizations and public companies all the way up, they are burned out. They aren't getting this. In fact, Alex, I was having a cigar the other night with a friend of mine who's been in biotech for decades. Public companies, huge. We're talking billions and billions of dollars in these companies, okay? He told me that he reached out to a friend. They connected on LinkedIn and they reached out. And he said, hey, I want you to know, when we used to work together, you just were always really enjoyable to work with. Fascinating mind, the way you would break down and analyze things, and I benefited from that. And he just went on to say several nice things. And when he said it, she said to him, you know, that's the first time in 8 years that I've had a professional compliment from someone that I worked with. I about fell out of the lawn chair. I was in a lawn chair, by the way, Eddie Bauer. Not very stable. And I was blown away by it. Why? Because this is an executive. She's an executive vice president for a public company. If I told you the name of it in the biotech space, you've probably heard of it. And you look it up and you go, this is an international global company, and she is way up the ladder. And if you think about it, the higher the ladder, or the higher the rung on the ladder that you're on, well, the less levels and people you have above you that can say, atta boy, atta girl. And here she is at an executive level. She only answers to about 2 or 3 people, he told me, above. And none of those people have told her, great job. You're crushing it. She's running a business unit that just the P&L on that business unit was over $400 million. So I bring that story up to say that the people that are leading managers aren't getting that. And so they aren't able to give it. You cannot give what you don't have. You can't give what you don't have. So if the manager's the linchpin, then we've got to get to a point where leaders at the very top are saying, you know what? I've got to meet these needs for our leaders, our managers, because if I can't meet those needs for them, in other words, if I don't fill them up, how in the world are they going to learn how to do it? How in the world are they going to have anything to give? And that's what's going on with this data. 59% of workers quiet quitting. Why, in a nutshell? They don't feel valued. They don't feel seen. So some of them aren't in the right seat of the bus. Some of them are in the right seat of the bus or on the right seat of the bus, but they don't want to be on that bus. Why? Human needs. I see meaning and purpose in my work. I'm recognized for my unique contribution, and I have a relationship with my leader that is positive. When those needs aren't met, they begin to look elsewhere, and then they start to look. Now watch the progression. I start to look elsewhere, but I'm scared about moving somewhere. So because I'm scared about moving somewhere, I go, I don't know. I think I'd rather be miserable and disengaged than, try moving on. And then it just gets worse and worse and worse, and eventually they leave you. All the while, productivity and profitability going down. So, compared with measures that people used from some of the Gallup training, and I'll just show you the other side of this because obviously they do all this data and then they have a lot of great resources to help companies. Now, this is really interesting. Okay? So, this is up to 18 months after these organizations use Gallup's training stuff to help them figure out engagement. They had 10 to 22% higher employee engagement, 21 to 28% reduction in employee turnover, 8 to 18% of higher employee engagement for teams led by participants, and 20 to 28% higher likelihood of high performance. So all that to say, Gallup's not just putting out the research. I mean, I know them. I know their training facility. I know their books. I know all their stuff. It's very good. But the idea here is the reason I share those numbers is because from a leadership standpoint, there is a chance to turn the tide here. So why does this matter? Why do I share this with you? Number one, if you, the worker, are not engaged, your mental, emotional, and physical health is in fact deteriorating. Indiana Wesleyan University published a recent study that said those men and women who classify themselves as not happy at work die on average 10 years earlier. I think you can make the case if you're very, very unhappy at work, you are dying slowly. At work. This is important stuff. Why in the world would you want to go in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? Just try to grin and bear it to Friday. It's killing you quicker than you're already dying. Number two, for the leader, for the manager. Why is this important? Why do we talk about this? Because this is actually changeable. If you meet those human needs by finding their talent, what they do well, their passion, what they love to do, the results that motivate them, their mission, and we find a seat or we create a seat on the bus or we give them a little bit of it and show them progression to that seat, and we get them in the right seat, and then their experience on the bus is meaningful because they're recognized for their unique contribution, because they have a relationship with you that is one of a coach or a mentor. When all of that begins to happen, guess what? They get excited to come into work. Their productivity is higher. Their performance is better. And you, the leader, get credit for that. Now that means the team is performing better. That means the company is performing better. You, the leader, aren't as stressed out. Leadership becomes less about complex issues and it becomes about simple people issues, serving people, coaching people, guiding people, mentoring people. You pick the metaphor. And when that happens, watch your enjoyment leader. Watch your enjoyment increase. Watch your health get better. Watch your opportunities to get promoted present themselves at a greater rate. And when it's all said and done, and this is the best part of why this matters, happier people at work means happier people. Marriages, parenting, relationships, physical health, blood pressure, it all starts to get better, folks. It's real. The science doesn't lie.
Did you know that recruiters take an average of 6 seconds to scan a resume? And that's if they ever see it in the first place. In fact, 75% of resumes are rejected before reaching a hiring manager. Listen, folks, if you want to get hired, you've got to make your resume worth noticing. That's why we created How to Write the Perfect Resume. This free guide will walk you through the 5 steps to stand out in the hiring process to get you your dream job. If you want to get started, go to kencoleman.com/resume.
You were created to fill a unique role in your work. That means you are needed, and it means you must do it. In other words, I think there's a decent amount of somebodies out there that needs you to show up and be the best version of you. And this is the idea of finding that unique role, that sweet spot, and filling it. That's why we created the Get Clear assessment. It's about a 15-minute assessment that will ask all the questions. All you got to do is shut your brain down and answer from your heart. And you're going to get a fabulous report that breaks down what you do best, talent, the type of work that you love, we call that passion, and then results of your work that motivate you, give you so much of that juice I like to talk about. That's mission. And then we put those results after we define them for you and give you a nice report so you can begin to see this. We give you a purpose statement with those answers, and that becomes a high-level job description of what will always be meaningful work. And you can translate that, transfer that, all throughout the world of work. It's called the Get Clear Assessment. Go to kencoleman.com/assessment, kencoleman.com/assessment. All right, so I mentioned this phrase a little bit earlier in the show, and it's been jumping around, and it's the newest thing. There was quiet quitting, and that's here to stay. It seems like everybody's adopted that, but now we've got grumpy staying. This is terrible. There's got to be a way to say that in a better way, more catchy way that we can term. But I don't have the time or energy to think through it. It's exhausting. This is just bad attitude. Grumpy staying is immaturity. It's immaturity. This is a Business Insider article. The headline is, first there was quiet quitting, now it's becoming grumpy staying. What does this look like in a couple of big companies? So I want to give you some real data from some big-time companies that highlight this grumpy staying business. Microsoft. So Insider had a reporter that obtained an internal poll. Is it just me, or are you slightly cynical when you see things like this? More on this in a second. So anyway, not sure how they got it, but Microsoft did an internal poll, and it found its way into this reporter's hands, and it found that 47% of Microsoft employees would stay with the firm if they got a comparable offer, down from 70% in November. So last November, 2022, same poll goes out, and Microsoft employees said, look, if I got a comparable offer, I'd stay. 70%. Now it's dropped to 47%. Another poll at Salesforce, also obtained by said reporter, found that just 34% of respondents said that Salesforce does a good job of retention, and 37% felt secure in their long-term futures there. One area that took a significant dip, just 50% said there was a climate of trust. Now, when contacted, I want to close the loop on this. When Microsoft spokesperson was contacted, they did say they disputed the specific details that I read, but they did say it had dropped. Specifically, the amount of people who would stay if they got a comparable offer. So people are wandering their eyes. Why? Well, let's go back to the 2 pieces of data from Salesforce. Excuse me, 3. We'll focus on 2. 37% of Salesforce employees felt secure in their long-term futures. That's pretty abysmal. Okay? And then 50% said there was only 50% said there was a climate of trust. So distrust is up and people don't feel secure. Why? Massive layoffs. So I don't know if I mentioned this in the show recently, but I did some research on layoffs. And would you know would you believe that companies that do mass layoffs, it never works out for them financially. But the number one reason they give for layoffs is financial. Microsoft just went through massive layoffs. So has Salesforce. These were widely reported. So what happens to the people left behind? Now, on paper, Salesforce and Microsoft, they're very smart people. They go, well, if we cut this amount of workers, we save this amount of cost as it relates to compensation, including benefits. And so you go, on paper, we saved a bunch of money. But here's what's interesting. The research shows that as it plays out, the productivity and people leaving because they're scared they're next ends up hurting productivity and profitability. And the time and money spent to replace the people who left who didn't get laid off ends up being a net negative. Fascinating. And that's why trust drops as well.
According to Glassdoor, the average job offer attracts over 250 applicants. If you've made it to the interview, you've already made a great impression. So now is the time to showcase how you are the best choice for the role. That's why we created How to Win the Interview. This free guide will walk you through the 5 strategies to help you stand out amongst the competition. With just some intentionality, you can prepare yourself to win the interview. Go to kencoleman.com/interview.
Well, it's that time of year. We've just put out a fresh crop of college grads into the wild. And it is a jungle out there. Class of 2023 faces a jittery job market, says the headline from the Wall Street Journal. The world seems to have flipped on its head. We'll come back to that quote. That's actually from an interview that's featured a little bit later in the article. So employers are now slowing their hiring process for graduating seniors this year. This is according to multiple college career offices at the Wall Street Journal interviewed. Now, this is a steep reversal from the past 2 years when companies were making offers before these seniors finished their final year. That's very normal, by the way. Companies are looking for fresh talent, and so they want to get these kids, prior to. And so the start of their senior year is when you would see over the last couple of years in this big hiring frenzy, offers flying at kids. And, of course, they took them. Now, 97% of college seniors surveyed by recruiting software firm ICIMS in March said they have considered alternative options in the uncertain job market. They're weighing graduate school, more on that in a second, gig work, or taking a job outside their major. Now, if you're someone who's listening or watching and that's you, and because you don't have a job offer in your hand and you may not see one coming, that you decide of those 3 options, getting a graduate degree, doing gig work, which would be freelance work, some type of, driving, delivery. Gig work is all over the place. It's freelance work. Or taking a job outside your major. Please don't go to graduate school just to delay you having to deal with not having a job. It seems like a lot. I can tell you millions of Americans do this every year. They don't have something they like, or they can't figure out what they like. So you know what they do? They kick the can down the road like Congress does on our national debt. Well, we'll deal with it 2 years from now. So what do? I've decided to go to grad school. Why? Because that feels better to tell people than I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, the problem is grad school comes with a massive sales price on it. And you got to get the loan. And then you go, well, I justify the loan because I am getting a grad degree and it's going to help me get a better job. Wait a second. You can't get a job now. So you think that a grad degree is going to get you a job? I don't know. This is a really strange labor market. Okay? 3.7% unemployment. We've seen a lot of hiring freezes. We've seen a lot of layoffs. Now we're seeing companies slowing down in hiring recent college grads. So it's a strange, strange time. But this is in the white collar world. What about the blue collar world? How about my friends in the trades? Where you don't need a fancy diploma. Well, I'll tell you how it's going for them. This is Jim Fish, who is the chief executive of Waste Management, Inc. This is a big-time company. And this is how he described the current situation in the job market. He said, we can't hire a truck driver to drive a trash truck for $90,000 in Houston, Texas. But I can hire an MBA from a small school for $60,000 and I can get them all day long. Ho, 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 ho. Can I translate what that means? That for decades and decades, we've told people that a college degree is the best way to success. And now we got too many freaking little whippersnappers rolling out with an MBA, and they're just dying, hoping to make $60,000. And you got the desire, the need for a truck driver. Let me tell you something. If I was one of these MBA whippersnappers that came out of college right now, and there wasn't a job available, you know what I'd do? I'd go down to Houston, Texas, Joe, and I'd drive a trash truck for $90,000. Because I just got a $30,000 raise off of a non-opportunity, and then I can tell a story. You know what I can tell people? I got my degree. I got my MBA. There wasn't an opportunity, but you know what I did? I got busy. I started driving a trash truck. And maybe, just maybe, I worked my way up through waste management because I was willing to drive a trash truck. I'd drive a trash truck for $90,000 before I would go get another graduate degree. I would drive a trash truck for $90,000. Then I would take some job that has no ladder, no opportunity in an industry that I don't give a crap about for $60,000. And because to me, driving the trash truck is the same as taking a job in an industry that I don't care about and a major I didn't get. It's the same thing, except that I'm making $30,000 more to drive a trash truck and call people and network all day long in between the beep, 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 you know? And I know it doesn't smell good, guys, but I figure you can mouth breathe. I have 3 kids. I changed all 3 of my kids' diapers. You know what I did? I breathe through my mouth when I change their diapers. If I'm driving a trash truck, I can breathe through my mouth. It's fascinating. So why do I share that story? Because that's the idea. That was in the headline I said I would come back to. This guy, Mr. Fish, says the world seems to have flipped on its head. He can't find a driver for a trash truck making nearly $100,000. But he can find an MBA grad that'll take 60 all day long, every day, twice on the Sunday. That's where it's flipped. Because the white collar market is slowing down, but the trades are heating up. $90,000 to drive a trash truck for waste management in Houston, Texas? That's a good living. Joe, if I find out you applied for that job, I'm going to be really upset.
I wouldn't do that.
I know you would. All right, let's go. I want to cover a few more things here. So, what are these college grads saying when it comes to a few specific areas in the workplace and what they're expecting, okay? So this is a job search sentiment, and I want to give credit to the study here. I think I touched on it earlier. The recruiting software firm ICIMS. Okay, very good. So this is what they said about confidence and jobs and compensation. 76% of the class of 2023 believes that they can find a well-paying job. Now, the question becomes, how do we define well-paying? I can tell you that a lot of these youngsters think that they can make $100,000 coming out of college. Why? Well, number one, they don't understand anything because they don't know what the real world is like. Number two, they have a overly inflated perception of their degree and their school. And A lot of these young people come from families that are very well-to-do, certainly wealthy. And so their expectations are completely outsized. Second area, what do the class of 2023 grads think about increasing consideration for exploring new opportunities? 40% are open to new industries or roles they had not previously considered as a result of the current economic situation. I'd like that number to be much higher. The world is changing rapidly, and if you can't find a job in your degree field, I would absolutely look for some comparable experience in a different industry that could be transferable later. And then finally, what factors make you more likely to apply for a job? This is this latest crop of college grads. 84% said job stability. They're looking for a job that they think is stable and safe with a company that is stable and safe. But when Microsoft and Salesforce and Amazon are laying people off by the thousands, folks, I don't think you can say that any company is safe and stable. Next was salary, 82%, and then 81% benefits. So there you go. That's the new crop. Hope that helped you. This is the Ken Coleman Show. Press on.
Thanks for listening to The Ken Coleman Show. For more, you can find the show on demand wherever you listen to podcasts and watch the show on YouTube. You can also find Ken across all social media by following @Ken Coleman.